Meghan loses title after divorce. The letter patent saved Harry a sloppy goal. The marriage between Meghan and Harry is an international marriage. It was entered into the UK and legally recognized by the US, so they can file according to where they were married, where they reside, or according to citizenship. Now, Meghan is American, and Harry, of course, is British. If Harry wanted to file for divorce in the UK, there's actually nothing stopping him from doing that. And if Meghan decided to object, then the courts would decide, not her, in much the same way as pretrial hearings are held to determine whether or not somebody is allowed to plead their case. Similarly, if Meghan decided to file in California, Harry could easily object. In the event of a disagreement, arguments over whose jurisdiction prevails could go on for quite a while, and it could cost quite a bit of money, even millions. Does either of them really even have millions to spend? Now, a lot would depend on who is pulling the plug and why, and also who their supporters are. You could basically dream up any scenario you want and have a good chance of being right, because nothing is a foregone conclusion. Right now, Meghan is holding on to the Duchess of Sussex title, a substantive title. If divorced, then she would take the courtesy title of Meghan Duchess of Sussex, just as the Duchess of York and the Princess of Wales did when they got divorced. The HRH she has, but is not allowed to use, would be taken away if they get divorced. That was previously decreed by Her late Majesty the Queen in letters patent. My suspicion is that as a widow, Meghan would be allowed to hold on to it. The Queen laid down the rules to deprive heir and daughters-in-law of their royal styling. At the time, I think it's safe to assume that she was not thinking about a law to punish a royal by marriage because their husband had the nerve to drop dead. Wikipedia chooses to refer to her in the style of a divorcee, but Burke's Peerage or Debrets is a more definitive reference for British royalty and nobility. Now, if Harry ended up passing away, making Meghan a widow instead of a divorcee, she would become the Dowager Duchess of Sussex, but usually she would be referred to as Meghan Duchess of Sussex, so there wouldn't be any big change there. Now, if Harry passed away, then Archie would immediately become the Duke of Sussex, and his eventual wife would be known as the Duchess of Sussex. Whether divorced or widowed, she would, by convention, give up the courtesy title upon remarrying. But a source has reported that, in fact, they would both lose the Sussex titles. Meghan should be Meghan Mountbatten-Windsor, and he should just be Prince Harry Mountbatten-Windsor. Neither one of them work for or represent the royal family, that's true. They don't represent or work for the monarchy or the people of Sussex. They live in the US, and in the US, of course, royal titles are not recognized. But still, there is precedent for the wife of a peer continuing to use the title after a divorce and remarriage to a commoner. Look at Cowley versus Cowley. Earl Cowley sought an injunction to stop his ex-wife from continuing to style herself as Countess Cowley. Now, they granted him that, but on appeal to the Court of Appeal, the judgment was overturned. And then after that, it went before the House of Lords Privileges Committee, and they upheld the Court of Appeal ruling. There is no real right for the ex-wife of a peer to keep on styling herself that way, but it is accepted as usual practice, and Earl Cowley had suffered no harm as a result of his ex-wife continuing to do that, so there were really no grounds for an injunction to stop her. Now, I think that if Meghan kept on styling herself as a royal duchess, the royal family could find more than enough reasons to stop her. As a surviving parent, Meghan's custody of the invisible kids would be automatic, unless, of course, there were some serious misgivings about her parenting, or perhaps whom she delegated parental responsibility to, like for example, her mother Doria, or maybe nannies, or whoever. Any child, regardless of whether or not the child is royal, would be subject to issues around safeguarding, and they could be made a ward of court if it was necessary. The royal family has no inherent right to custodianship. The fact they barely know the kids certainly wouldn't help matters either. The grand opinion for the prerogative concerning the royal family was written back in 1717 by George I, and it is way overquoted and actually a bastardized bit of fluff. In fact, most magazines out there have quoted it at some point in time just to fill up some space on a boring day. The reason that he wrote it was because he did not enjoy a good relationship with his son, later George II, and so he was wanting to control the choice of godparents for his future grandson. They reviewed it back in 1772, and they reinterpreted it as the monarch had the right to care of the marriage and education of the children of the royal family. And this later opinion acknowledges that the king had the care of the royal children and grandchildren, and the presumptive heir to the crown. Now, how does a king's petty control of his son weigh against other legislation like the Children Act of 1989? Another thing is that care and legal custody are not the same thing. It's very improbable in the US, especially in California, because they have no-fault divorce and asset division laws that often really mess up the person with the most assets. So it looks like Harry is well and truly screwed. Now, if he has a UK prenup, then it could be not recognized in California or maybe anywhere else in the US for that matter. And then when it comes to Meghan Markle, well, such a shame that he made decisions with the head in his pants instead of the one on his shoulders. It looks like that decision has come back to bite him pretty hard in the butt. In many ways, Harry and Meghan are incredibly similar. None of the royal family, including the king, can stand Meghan, and they especially despise her for being the catalyst that turned Harry into somebody that nobody who used to know him can recognize. None of his former friends or family understand what has happened to him. I do think that both of them, though, are narcissists, so in some ways they are like two peas in a pod. For all his rank, power, and privilege, Charles is still wanting respect from people. He wants admiration and he wants validation. Meghan would have stroked his ego, I can be sure of that. Charles is most likely also a narcissist, and like all narcissists, Charles does not believe that he can make a mistake. Everybody else does, but not him. Charles is also very aware of his image, which is why he has gone back and forth between the greater man with the olive branch and the iron fist of power. I wouldn't even want to guess where Meghan sits on his favorability spectrum. But there is one thing at least that we know for certain. Meghan's days of manipulating him are over. Because Meghan and Harry have an international marriage, they actually have more choices than non-international couples, and so they can try to figure out which option is going to help them the most individually. It's also important to remember that residence and domicile are not the same thing. Unless Harry has taken steps to be domiciled by choice, he is still domiciled by origin. Now, if he were not, then he wouldn't be eligible to be a counselor of state. Technically, Harry's occupation is still Prince of the United Kingdom, and as far as I know, Meghan is still officially a Princess of the United Kingdom. And as if these parental occupations were not enough, didn't we recently have to hear all about them claiming that their children's birthright as Prince and Princess of the United Kingdom was such a big deal to them? I think we don't need to listen to what they have said, we need to see what they have done, and it looks to me like they are bound and determined to be royal. It seems to me that the UK has more than enough jurisdiction in the Sussex divorce, and if California is the appointed forum, then Meghan could still go the way of Kelly Rutherford. Theoretically, they have options actually. They could file in a few different places, but their current residence and domicile and home of the kids is in California. Any filing anywhere else would almost certainly get kicked back there. Forum shopping, particularly in custody matters, is really discouraged. They also own real property in California and apparently nowhere else, which is also going to increase the likelihood that any action would end up there. And you, what do you think about their marriage? Please tell me your opinion below in the comments section. Don't be afraid to like and share this video with anybody else who needs it anytime you want. And don't be afraid to click the subscribe button to get more updates in the future. Thank you so much for tuning in, have a lovely weekend, and we'll be back to see you all tomorrow.